Okay, time to move on to WP2. WP2 builds a lot off of what we were already doing in WP1. We're continuing to just explore what writing in your discipline looks like. This time it's going out and asking an expert in their field what writing that they do. I would like you to keep with the same field as WP1. It's really important because we will build up throughout the semester, and then you're going to kind of summarize all of this stuff in WP4. So keep with that same field as WP1. Go out there and find some kind of professional. Think about if you're staying in academia, you're studying a field as in an academic discipline, then you can interview one of your professors about the writing that they do for their field. If you are looking at a job, try to find somebody who is in that job that you might want to be able to talk to. You don't have to interview this person in person. You can do it by video or by phone. And as a last resort, you can do it by email. But I would much prefer you do it by video or phone. Usually the interviews go much better that way. So during your interview, I want you to focus on specifically what is important to writing in your specific field and what tips this professional would give you about writing in the field. What do they wish that they knew when they were first starting out in that field? Finally, you can compare what you learned from WP1 to what you find out in WP2. What stuff held up and what stuff did you find out was different? So if they say, oh, it's really important that you do X, and in your WP1 you said that you should do X, then great, point that out. If they say you should do Y and you said in WP1 that you saw X, then you can point that out as well. This one is about the same length as WP1. I think both were 1,500 words. And like WP1, you need to include at least one mode other than written text. The simplest way here is just going to be doing a screenshot of some piece of writing that they've done, or a screenshot of your interview with them, or something other than just written text. As with all of the writing projects, you are welcome to do these in a different form though: a video, animation, podcast, website, infographic, whatever you want to do. This time the completion drafts are due October 13th and the final draft is due October 22nd. The submission will be exactly the same as with WP1. The basics for this one are pretty simple. Like with WP1, the basics are what I grade completion drafts on. So please make sure that you're paying special attention to these as you complete your completion draft. So first of all, you need to find a professional in your field that needs to be interviewed. Again, video or audio is the best. If you do end up needing to do a text interview by email or by chat, that's fine, but that's only if it's not possible to do an audio or video interview. If you do need to do it in text instead of audio or video, please make sure to ask me in advance that you can do it that way. And make sure to provide me at that time with documentation that you tried to schedule an audio or video interview. Send me the emails of the back and forth or whatever it is that you did to try to get that going. Recordings of your interview should be submitted with the draft whenever possible. So you don't have to include it in the draft, but you just need to put it in your shared folder with me. The recordings of the interview need to be with the permission of the interviewee. So please do ask and say, is it okay if I record this interview before you start recording? If they specifically do say, I would prefer not to be recorded, that is okay. You need to tell me that as soon as you know. Okay, you will develop a set of questions to ask your interviewee about writing in the field, what is important about that kind of writing, what tips they have, what is different about that kind of writing than other types of writing, and so on and so on. We're going to use a number of ways to develop these questions. So we will have a document that everyone has access to in Google Drive where everybody's going to be dumping all of the questions that they're thinking about using. So you can look into that document and pull out the questions that are most relevant for you. You also will be doing a practice interview along the way. And so in the practice interview, you can kind of tweak your questions to get them the most appropriate for your specific context. In this project, you will be summarizing and synthesizing what you learned from the interview. Use direct quotes and even use audio clips if you would like to. But this is not just a retelling of the interview. Don't just repeat the interview whole cloth. You need to synthesize it, meaning you need to pull out what's important and summarize it down to the main points that you're trying to make from the interview. This is not a transcript of the interview. This is a synthesis of the interview. Finally, you can compare what you learned from the interviewee to what you learned from WP1. What did you notice that was mentioned? What features did they provide more detail about? Were there any clashes? And how do you explain that difference? Please also include a copy of the questions that you asked with your draft as well, in addition to the recording. Those are the basics for WP1. Remember, these are the things that I'm going to look for to grade you. I'm going to make sure that you have a good interviewee, that you've developed a reasonable set of questions, and that I have a copy of it, that you are trying to synthesize the interview, not just repeat it whole cloth, and that you are comparing it to WP1. That's what I'm going to look for in your completion draft of WP1. The grading is here, and it works much the same way as it did with WP1. Notice the grading criteria are quite different than for WP1. I am asking, so the selection of interviewee is important, questions about the interview, questions about specifically writing experiences, writing tips, how well you summarize and synthesize what you have gotten from the interview, your use of quotations, comparison and contrast with WP1, and then the last few are the same as WP1. Organization, multimodal elements, manuscript preparation, and attention to assignment. Your grade will be determined in the same way as with WP1 as well. How many exceptional you get how many exceptional met and not met you get will determine what grade you get along here on the side. Please remember again, a not met cancels out an exceptional. So let's say if you had 11 exceptional and 1 not met, you would end up with a score of 10, not 11, because the not met cancels out one of the exceptionals. All right. So like with WP1, you are required to ask a question in the questions forum about WP2. You're welcome to ask about anything. You can ask about things that you're still curious about, things that you want to know more information about, things that you want tips about from me. Anything is fair game to ask.